We're live again, the Will Studios, and I'm working on release. And I really feel like I need to get my thoughts out there about Rebel Moon. And I'm chewing on how I would rewrite it, because the whole thing needs a plot. You need something to hang the visuals on. And that's what I think, it's a great example of something that I fear is happening too often. And that's where people sell the idea for a movie, I think, based on like concept art that they can create. And we had some very talented concept artists working on Rebel Moon. But I started watching part 2. So part 1, they introduced the Nazis. And it's over and over again like war crimes. So they're invading planets and treating them poorly and just being villainous. And they're led by this Hans Landa, but he also looks like Mandark when he takes his freaking jacket off. And he's always like, he's got the chin. I actually don't think it's the chin guy from House of the Dragon. I think he's another guy who's just doing something with his chin. Like he's mewing all the time. He's looking around. But he has a shitty haircut, and they have a scene like, you know how Darth Vader, very menacing dude, he has a scene where he goes into his chamber and gets his dome washed, you know? Helmet comes off, gets put back on. Well, this guy smokes space opium and has a giant tentacle monster sucking on his wounds. That's what he does, because this is Rebel Moon, and they do things to the extreme. We need as much over-the-top violence and sex and sexual violence that we can. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm not sure. Like, I guess I understand the story, I just don't care about it. So, the Child of Fire, what's-her-face, the movie starts out where she's on a Amish planet, and they make a lot of food on this planet, but they put 0 points into defense. And so when the Nazis show up and they start wrecking their, they're like, hey, give us your grain or else. And they just get pushed around. But it turns out she was like one of the high-ranking Nazis. She was the one who actually murdered the princess back when she was a Nazi. And it was such a like weird scene, 'cause she's this is a flashback to her Nazi days. And she is trusted with guarding the princess. And she finds out that this is a magic princess who can bring birds back to life. But her adoptive space daddy, because they showed up and like wrecked her home planet, but then they adopted her, and she became one of them. So he got her to do it, and then scapegoated her because she was an outsider, because they're all racists. And even though they literally witnessed the dude killing the other 4 members of the family, they were all just willing to blame her in the moment. And that's why she got exiled to the Amish planet. And now the Amish people won't really accept her until she has a baby with one of them. And then the Nazis show up. And then it turns out that they were selling some of their grain to some rebels, right? And hey, maybe we could get some rebels to come and protect us. Was their thought process there. And that was really the whole movie, was them going out and gathering allies. So they were putting a ragtag group of anti-Nazi fighters together. One guy was on a gladiator planet, and he's basically Maximus, because he was like a former general who was exiled or whatever, and now he fights as a slave in the arena, and he's just drunk. He's a drunk. And then there's a Asian lady with their lightsabers, and she has to fight a spider for this little city that she's protecting. But she just like jumps at the chance. She's like, I don't even need to know you people. If you're offering a chance to fight the space Nazis, I'm in. And then you had the dude from Pacific Rim. And he's been in a bunch of stuff. He was Sons of Anarchy guy. So he's there, and he's like a sexy space pirate guy, right? And the Child of Fire girl, she just got done. She came off this Amish planet where she was having not the best intercourse. They made that very clear, because they had a feast, and then the head Amish dude is like, time to go fuck each other, and his wife is like grabbing at his crotch and shit. And so then she goes back. In the extended edition, you get to a little sex scene, and you don't get that in the theatrical edition. In the extended edition, she has a sex scene, and then when she wanders out, she like wipes it out of her. It's freaking like, ugh. Just like too much. I really don't think we need to be going in that direction, to be honest. Like, I'm sorry to disappoint any of the really horny people out there, but Release is not going to have really any sex in it. There's going to be cute girls, you know, with cute outfits, as there are in real life, but we're not going over, like, it doesn't really add anything. In this case, I bet Zack Snyder was like, it adds the fact that she's like having sex with this dude who she doesn't even like, because in the theatrical version you don't even really get that. You know, it just jumps from the feast to her talking with the old dude. And she's stepping out of somewhere and having a cigarette, but it's unclear like who she was with. But she's coming off of that, and she's been zipping all over the galaxy looking for these randos, these people who, like, they're fighting an army with guns. I imagine anyone who's, like, in the army is looking at this like, okay, like, you're gonna fight us with sticks? Like, in the beginning of the extended edition, it starts with the Nazis are assaulting a planet of peaceful monks, but the king monk is very good at hand-to-hand combat, and so all of the foot soldiers who have giant machine guns in their hand, they keep running right up to him and like trying to shoot him point blank in the face, and he just like swats them aside and, you know, does his space kung fu and casts him aside or whatever. But he's eventually like cornered. They're like overwhelmed by numbers or whatever. And then Hans Landa strolls up. And he's got a big golden femur. And he makes the kid of the king bash his brains in, like Negan style. And so it really is like, you think about what TV's been popular, and they were trying to shove it into a Star Wars skin, right? So you have Game of Thrones style, but over the top, not very tastefully done sexual stuff. Then you watch The Walking Dead and you put as much of that style like stuff in there. Kid has to bash his dad's brain in so that his family can survive. And I don't know if it, like, ends up having its own identity, really. So, the end of the first one, and it took me, like, 3 nights to get through it. And I'm really kind of annoyed at the way the YouTube algorithm just doesn't like me using clips. And so I'm reduced to using the freaking YouTube radio. Because those other streams were really good, I feel like. When I was watching it happen, and you got my genuine reaction to the tooth mural, because Hans Landa shows up at the Amish people planet in the beginning when they're making their little negotiations before the Child of Fire goes out on her mission to acquire allies. He bashes in the head Amish guy's head for lying to him about the harvest, because at first he's like, oh, I don't have very much to give you guys. And Hans Landa's like, I smell a lie. And then what's his face pops up and it's like, oh, well, you know, he's just being pragmatic, conservative with the numbers. Maybe listen to what I say instead. And so he pretty much gets the one dude killed with that little stunt. Which he was probably going to get killed anyway, if it was written properly. But, right after he gets his head bashed in, these monks show up, they shuffle in, and they take one of his teeth out, and they pop it in this little mosaic frame that they've been carrying around. And it ends up being more funny than creepy to me that they're walking around with this framed portrait or whatever. And they gotta find teeth. They're waiting around for the next person to get his head bashed in with the golden femur. They have to line the darker colored ones up just right. Overall, I'm going to say don't watch it. If you're tempted to watch Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon, if you're kind of like me and thought, hey, maybe the guy who did the Justice League movies had a good original idea and he like wanted to make it a Star Wars story, but they wouldn't let him, and so he went out and he did his own thing. And I remember, like, I'm not everywhere on the internet at all times, and for a little while there I was following a lot of like cosplayers, and there was all this release the Snyder Cut stuff, and it was like, oh, Justice League kind of sucked, but the Snyder Cut, you know, if they would have just kept him on as the director and let him put out a 4-hour movie, 3.5-hour movie, whatever, it would have been amazing. And I watched it, and it just kind of wasn't. But he did the same thing here, where he's releasing a Snyder Cut, and it's like that's part of his brand now. And I had suspected that the Snyder Cut would be the one that just had all the over-the-top sex stuff, and so I went back and I watched the theatrical version, the one that they had released first, and so they cut the monks out from the beginning, and it just starts with what's-her-face on the Amish planet, harvesting grain, you know, working hard and not quite fitting in with these horny Amish people. Maybe she has sort of a crush on one of them. She can't tell. And I thought maybe they were going to cut out the scene where they go to, like, Mos Eisley, and this weird, grotesque, naked mole rat alien, like 8 foot tall. I'm trying to remember, because I've seen the skin condition before. Like if the Emperor Palpatine was bloated from being in a river for too long. But anyway, he comes up and just grabs the dude, from the Amish planet who tags along, grabs him by the dick and was like, hey, I'm gonna freaking buy you for the evening. And what's-her-face is like, no, I'm gonna fight you and your dudes. And this is where they hook up with the dude from Sons of Anarchy, right? And I'm like, well, they should probably have just cut that scene, at least down a little bit. Because they could have just not done that at all. But no, they kept that scene. They needed it. Because, you know, it's just so typical of alien naked mole rats to walk up and start fights like, okay, so you grab this dude by the dick to try and fuck him, and then his butch partner here, this girl, is like, no, and fights you off, like smacks your head on the table. And then you come back with a couple of dudes and you have like so now you're gonna have a shootout over it. I just feel like it was really over the top and random, that part. But a lot of it was kind of like over the top and random. Some of the visuals were cool. They have a some sort of like metal goddess chained up and with wires like running through her mouth and it powers like their warp drive. So it's kind of like in Doin. You know how in Doin they have those creatures that use the spice to do the warp drives, right? So this is like that, but metal. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of cool. That was kind of like reminiscent of like Evangelion a little bit. Some of those like visuals. Yeah, Rebel Moon was fucking terrible. Do not recommend. And I'm still gonna finish. I'm actually gonna finish watching the part 2. Might say a few words about it. I don't feel like there's really too much to talk about, to be honest. Ugh. I gotta start sleeping.